Oh. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the FEEA 2018 Scholarship Program. Just so you know, we've muted everybody in the conversation, and hopefully you can all hear me. If anyone is having trouble hearing or has a question, we just ask you to type it in the chat function so that we can respond to you. So I'm not sure how familiar you all are with FEEA, but what is FEEA? FEEA is the Federal Employee Education and Assistance Fund. We are a national charity for federal employees and by federal employees. We are not a new charity. We've been around for over 30 years, and in that time, we've worked with 50,000 federal families. We have a number of programs. We do an emergency loan program. We have disaster relief grants. We have merit-based scholarships, which is what you're all here to hear about today. We also have some survivors scholarships, which we've been doing with the children who survived their parents who passed in a terrorist attacks like Oklahoma City or on 9/11 or the embassy bombings in Africa, etc. And we also have a subsidiary, FEEA Child Care Services Incorporated, that provides child care subsidies in partnership with federal agencies. So before I talk about the rest of the scholarship program, I wanted to just make folks aware of, I know often we have high school students who are applying for the scholarships, and sometimes they need service hours as part of their graduation requirements. And we do have a volunteer opportunity open right now this spring, and that is to work on the Public Service Recognition Week 5K. This will be the 6th anniversary of the charity walk and run this year. And you can learn more about it if you go to www.feea.org/5K. There's an opportunity to volunteer both on race day and also to volunteer in advance in helping to recruit participants. So why do we give scholarships at FEEA? Well, for one thing, our organization has a deep commitment to higher education, and we want to be part of helping college or making college or graduate school in the reach for federal employees and for their families. Our scholarship programs look at both academic achievement and community engagement. We have a pretty wide set of criteria that we look at, and we have had a pretty large reach. We've had over 10,000 scholarship recipients in our history, in our 30-year history. How do we fund our scholarships? So we have a number of partnerships that work with FEEA to help us support our scholarships. First and foremost, we have individuals who donate every year to FEEA, either directly through our website or by mailing us a check or through the combined federal campaign. We have a number of businesses who contribute to the scholarship program, and I can just name two to start. One is Blue Cross Blue Shield this year is going to sponsor 100 scholarships, and Long-Term Care Partners is going to sponsor 50 scholarships, and there are other businesses that are going to be working with us also. We also partner with a number of unions and associations that offer scholarships for their members or the children of their members. For example, AFG, Blacks in Government, NARF. And when you get to the application, if you're have a parent or you yourself as a federal employee or a member of one of those groups, you should denote that so that we can consider you for that funding in our common application. So our scholarships range from $1,000 to $5,000 and can be used for tuition expenses. And so you fill out the common application, and then the actual scholarship amount is determined based on the sponsor level for that particular fund that you might be part of, and also through our committee work. The scholarships are not renewable, but winners may apply again as long as they continue to meet the eligibility criteria for the program. Who is eligible to apply? So children, stepchildren, and legal dependents of full or part-time permanent federal, civilian, or postal employees can apply. And the students themselves, unless they're a federal employee, must be, this is the children of federal employees, they must be under the age of 25. Blacks in government also sponsors federal employee members of a grandchild. So the grandchild of a Blacks in government member is also eligible to apply. Spouses of full or part-time permanent civilian federal or postal employees can apply. And then federal employees themselves. And as I mentioned, children and grandchildren, not only of Blacks in government and great-grandchildren, of NARF members are also eligible to apply. One special note for NARF members is that the applicants must be high school seniors. So NARF scholarships are only for the freshman year or the first year of college. Federal employees are able to apply and sponsor themselves. So if you're a federal employee working to complete your undergraduate or your graduate degree, you sponsor yourself. And if you sponsor someone else or you're sponsoring yourself, you have to have 3 or more years of service. And we usually base this on the SF-50 of the federal employee, or their, was it notification? Their
it's a standard form 50.
Standard form 50, which calculates your service years. All of our applicants have to have a 3.0 or higher cumulative unweighted grade point average. And if you have below that, you will kind of get kicked out of the system. You won't be eligible to apply for the scholarship. And the reason we do that is because we just have such a tremendous number of applicants that is one of the criteria we do have a floor for. If you're a child, stepchild, eligible grandchild, you have to be enrolled full-time for the year of the scholarship. You can't be a part-time student. Federal employees, however, obviously because they're working, can be part-time students. So what is the application like? So we use a common application that is of our own generation, meaning you only fill out one application. So if you want to apply for a FEEA sponsored scholarship and a big sponsored scholarship, you don't have to fill out 2 applications. You fill out just one. The application is online, and the deadline for all of our scholarships is the exact same day. It's March 21st. You can access the scholarship instructions and the online application at www.feea.org/scholarships. And one thing I do have to stress, because we get questions about this, while you may be being sponsored by a parent or a grandparent, the sponsor is not completing the application. You, the student who will receive the scholarship, must apply directly. All of the work must be your own for your scholarship application. So if you go to that website and you click on the apply button, you will see this is the screen. And one thing I wanted to point out is before you get started, if you want to see, what's this application like? Do I want to apply? If you go to the very bottom of this screen, you'll see a button called Preview. If you click on Preview, you will see a copy of the full application text, and you can take a look at that. So the other thing is, we don't expect you to complete the application in one sitting. So you have the opportunity to save and then go back in and complete the application later. And you can do that here. You can begin when you hit save before logging out. It's when you first start the application, it will prompt you to make a password and you'll have your login information. Then if you go back to www.smarterselect.com, then you can put in that password, login and password, and you can go back to your application. If you forget the password, you can hit forget password and it'll send it to that email to remind you of your password. You can only submit one application. So if people do submit more than one, we just disqualify them. And that's really just because we have such a huge program to run. We have so many volunteers engaged in picking it that we want to make sure that everybody just submits one application. So section 1 of the application, a couple things. You can use your tab key to move from section to section through the questions in the application. You need to complete everything with an asterisk, because if you get to the end and you've left something blank with an asterisk, then it's going to say that you can't submit. It's going to stop you from submitting the application. So really pay attention to those. All applicants must have a federal employee sponsor who's a current federal employee, and that's except for the NARF sponsored participants, because obviously many of their sponsors are in fact retired. So at the beginning, it will ask you if your sponsor is a NARF member or not, and if it's a NARF, if your sponsor is a NARF member, then you get to skip some of those questions about their current federal employment. After that, you're going to be asked if your sponsor is a member of any of these associations, like I talked about, NARF, AFG, NABNA. There's a very long list. So if they are, then we're going to ask you to complete information about their membership. Now, one thing I will say about membership, they must be a current member in good standing through the summer of 2018. So for example, if you have a sponsor and they're a member of a union, they have to be an active member of the union because the union will verify that before we issue the scholarship payments. The next part of the application includes the applicant providing some bulleted lists about their experience and background to help the selection committee look more about their level of engagement in their community. So the lists we ask for are about community service activities, extracurricular activities, and significant awards. Now, you don't have to write 10 pages for each of these. In fact, bullets are best. We want you to go back no more than 5 years. We want you to put the most important things first. So better for you to say, hey, I've been really engaged for 5 years in a row, I've done this, and make that your first bullet, than list every very small activity you were interested in only one time. That's definitely easier for the committee members to review. So make sure your most important things are up front. In that bulleted list, we ask for the dates and a brief description of the activity and your role in it. Please be careful about acronyms because the selection committee members may not know if you use an acronym for a club or a group you worked with. Spell it out. And we also recognize that a number of students have to work, and really their engagement is from part-time work they've done in their community, and that is great. And if you are working in school or as a student, you can include that all in your extracurricular activities list. Applicants must load a PDF copy of their most recent academic transcript with their fall 2017 grades included. So this is very important, and unfortunately every year there's students that just send a class list and they don't include their fall grades and they get disqualified from the program. We don't need an official copy, so if you can download from your school system or you've been provided an unofficial copy of your transcript, we will accept that. And if for some reason your school doesn't include fall grades, this is very rare, then you need to scan a copy of your fall report card with your transcript. If your transcript itself doesn't have the grades, but you were issued a separate report card. Again, this is not something we see very common, and because many of our students are applying to a number of programs, when you ask the guidance counselors at school, they're able to produce the type of transcript you need. Applicants will also be writing a 500-word essay, maximum 500 words. We recommend drafting the essay outside of the application system. I think it's often easier to edit these things. It's easier to save your work. And then they cut and paste the final version into their application. The best essays we see are clear, they're concise, they address the question, they include facts to back up their opinion and their thesis, as well as their opinions. And the essays must be 100% the student applicant's work. And we check for plagiarism every year. And unfortunately, we do have to disqualify students at times when they have plagiarized an essay, and we're able to detect it through the partnership we have with a firm that checks for plagiarism. Applicants also need a reference letter from a teacher, professor, guidance counselor, community member. Basically, we need it from someone who's not a family member. So it's someone who knows you well, ideally somebody who you worked with on a project, was a supervisor or a colleague. Our online system, the references must go through our online system. And so while our deadline is Wednesday, March 21st, for your application, that is also the deadline for the references. So that means it's probably unlikely that you can start and finish your application in one day, because you probably can't count on your reference writer to complete the reference in one day. So we really encourage people to log in, go to section 2, and request a reference letter from their college. I always tell students, make sure you ask for if that person is willing to do a reference letter for you. Send them a separate email in advance. Say, hey, you're probably going to be getting an email from the system asking you for your reference letter, because of course it's jolting, I think, for someone to just get an electronic system request for a reference letter that didn't know they were going to be getting it. So that's why we often encourage people to go to that. You can skip ahead, go to section 2 right away, so you can fill that out. One little trick with the system is if you do not click next at the end of section 2, as if you're trying to get to section 3, your request won't be sent. So make sure you click through all the way through, click next, and get to section 3 so that you're able to get your reference letter sent through the system. And here's a copy of what this form looks like for your reference. You'll put in the name, the last name, the email address. This information is optional. And then many of you will probably have the question, I wonder if my reference has written the letter yet. Well, there's an easy way for you to check that. If you take that login and password that you have and you go back to smarterselect.com, you can log in and it will tell you the status. And so it'll it's a little hard to see on this system, but basically when you look here to the right, it'll tell you if it's been submitted or not. Now, if you find out that that reference request is not going to be able to write the letter, you can actually go back to this page and submit it to somebody else. So it won't submit to 2, it'll stop that one person's access, and it'll send a new reference request to another person to write it for you. So, section 3, this is the last section, and this is a lot of demographic data about applicants. None of this goes to the selection committee. This is for FEEA. This is to make sure that we are getting enough reach, that there's enough people hearing about our program, that our applicant pool is diverse, but we don't use this information except for our outreach measurement. But we do require that folks complete it, that section. And if there's a specific question you don't want to answer, you have the right to say, prefer not to answer. So, be careful not to be disqualified. Here are the most common things we see that students, and it really pains us to have a good student prepare an application and then miss one of these key points and then ultimately be disqualified from the program. 1, make sure your transcript has your fall grades. And if it doesn't, be sure to scan and include your fall report card. Don't just send a class list. We are looking at fall grades. And our experience is that since the deadline is not until March, there should be no problem for people to get grades from the fall. Make sure all of your attachments are saved and uploaded as PDFs, and then make sure they're legible. So if you're scanning something on your phone, take a good look at it. Is it readable? Is it legible? Sometimes folks scan things and they don't check the scan before they upload it, and it turns out it's illegible. Same thing for your sponsors, SF50, or anything else you're attaching. Make sure you check the scan, you check the PDF before you upload it. You need to request your recommendation letters well in advance. Every year we'll have somebody where, the school wants to send the school wants to send the recommendation letter a month after the competition is closed and everything's gone to the committee. And at that point, we just say we can't accept it. It's all due on the same day, so you need to request the recommendation letter nice and early. Please make sure all of your writing is your own work and original, because we have unfortunately had to disqualify applicants who have used others' work in their application. And then don't forget to hit the submit button when you're ready to submit. Sometimes you get to the bottom of the page 3 and you think, okay, I put all my answers in. If you don't hit submit, your application is not submitted. So please make sure to do that. So how is selection done? Well, FEEA recruits a really diverse pool from all kinds of professions, locations, employers to review our applications. And that group, several people read each application, and here's what they're looking for. They are looking for the applicant's record of academic and personal achievement, community service and engagement. They look at the recommendation letter, and they look at the substance and the quality of the writing throughout the entire application. So these are the areas we encourage you to focus on. We notify our applicants in the summer. We don't have an exact drop dead date, and that's because a lot of that depends on how many applications we receive. We want to make sure the committee has enough time to review, make recommendations to us. Then we need to do our own set of verifications. So we usually let people know in the summer. I will say this year, I think we let people know at the end of July. So I imagine something similar will happen, and we will notify applicants as soon as we really can. We also want to notify people. If you are a recipient of the scholarship this year, you will be mailed a package to your address of record from your application that includes terms and conditions for the scholarship, a certificate, and that'll be mailed to that address. You'll fill that out, and then we will mail your scholarship check send it back to you, and then you will deposit it to your campus bursar. So the checks are not made out to the student, the checks are made out to the university. If you're not selected this year, then you will receive an email from us. And we always ask people to check their spam, because sometimes when we send out a bulk email, some things go to spam. So you should be on the lookout for that. I would say starting beginning of July, you should be checking your email. So the deadline for scholarships is March 21st, 2018 at 11:59 EDT. That is the deadline. The system will shut off after that. So we always tell folks, don't wait to the last minute. If there's an internet glitch, something happens, your power goes out, you don't want to have done all this hard work. Try to get it in a few days before. We released the scholarship very early this year to give folks even more time to prepare. And just as I said, here's the address, www.feea.org/scholarships is for the instructions. And do we have any questions? You can write your questions in the group chat.
And if you're not seeing the chat box, you can hover over the bottom of your screen and click on the chat icon to bring up a box that will allow you to type in a question.
Well, if there are no questions, we will sign off this afternoon. Thank you all for participating, and we wish you the best of luck with your scholarship applications. Bye-bye.